She demanded, "You're sexist if you don't pay off my dad's $50,000 gambling debt before the wedding." I said, "Let me get my checkbook." Then I canceled the wedding, hired a PI, and found proof her dad was hiding assets. When I sent the proof to the casino he owed money to. I, 34M, have always prided myself on being a rational person. I make spreadsheets for vacation planning. I research major purchases for months. I once spent 3 weeks analyzing different brands of coffee makers before buying one. So when it came to proposing to my girlfriend of 4 years, Audrey, 32F, I thought I had done my due diligence. We had compatible life goals, similar values, healthy communication, or so I thought, and our families got along well enough. Looking back, the signs of trouble were there. The unexplained girls' weekends that seemed to coincide with her father's business trips, the inside jokes between them that no one else understood, her defensiveness whenever I asked about certain credit card charges. But love has a way of blinding even the most analytical minds, and I'd always attributed her secretiveness to an independent streak I actually admired. We had been engaged for 6 months, and the wedding was scheduled for next month. Everything was going smoothly. Venue booked, catering selected, honeymoon planned. Until last Sunday, when my fiancé's father, Martin, called me and asked if we could meet man-to-man at his country club. Martin has always been the archetypal rich dad, golf on weekends, martinis at lunch, casually name-dropping his connections. He made his money in commercial real estate in the 90s and has spent the past 2 decades making sure everyone knows it. But beneath the Rolex and the tailored suits, I always sensed something slightly off about him, like he was playing a character rather than being a genuine person. Still, he was about to be family, so when he called for a private meeting, I agreed. We met at his club, where he ordered a $200 bottle of scotch for the table before we even sat down. The waiter knew him by name. Classic Martin. Only later would I learn from Kevin, the PI, that Martin's extravagant spending wasn't just vanity, it was calculated. In commercial real estate, maintaining an aura of success is often necessary to land clients and close deals. The country club membership, the expensive scotch, the designer suits, all were investments in his image. But as his actual finances deteriorated, the facade had become increasingly expensive to maintain. After some small talk about the wedding, he cleared his throat and leaned in. "So son, I'm in a bit of a situation and I need your help." I braced myself, wondering if he was going to ask for help setting up a surprise for Audrey or planning some extravagant father-daughter dance. "I owe some people about 50 grand, he said, swirling his scotch. "Gambling debt. Cards got away from me in Atlantic City last month." I blinked. This was not what I had expected. "The thing is," he continued, "if Audrey's mother finds out, there will be hell to pay, and I can't access that kind of cash without her noticing." I waited for him to continue, wondering where I fit into this scenario. "So I was thinking," he said, lowering his voice, "since you're doing so well with your tech job and you're about to be family, maybe you could help me out? Just until I can move some investments around. 6 months, tops." I stared at him, trying to process what he was asking. "You want me to lend you $50,000? He waved his hand dismissively. "Not lend exactly. Consider it an investment in family harmony. You wouldn't want Audrey upset right before the wedding, would you?" I explained, as politely as possible, that while I was doing well in my career, I didn't have that kind of cash just lying around. My savings were tied up in the wedding, our honeymoon, and the down payment for a house we were planning to buy next year. Martin's face hardened. "I see. Well, I thought you were the kind of man who took care of family. My mistake." I left the meeting feeling unsettled. Something about the whole interaction felt off. Martin hadn't seemed desperate or apologetic, just entitled, as if my refusal was an insult rather than a reasonable response to an unreasonable request. When I got home that evening, Audrey was waiting for me. One look at her face, and I knew Martin had already called her. "So you refused to help my dad," she said, arms crossed. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. The amount of money, the gambling, the secrecy from her mother. "Don't you think this is something your parents should work out together?" I asked. "You don't understand my family," she snapped. "Mom would divorce him over this. Is that what you want? For my parents' marriage to end right before our wedding?" I was taken aback by her reaction. In 4 years, I'd never seen Audrey so angry or so unreasonable. "I just don't think it's appropriate for me to get involved in this," I said. "You're already involved. You're about to become part of this family." Our argument escalated, with Audrey becoming increasingly agitated, and then she dropped the bomb. "If you really loved me, you'd do this," she said. "Or is it because he's a man asking for help? If it were my mom, would you be so hesitant?" I didn't realize I was marrying such a sexist. I was stunned into silence. Sexist? Because I wouldn't secretly pay off her father's gambling debt? "You know what?" I said, finally. "Let me get my checkbook." Her face lit up with relief. "I knew you'd understand. This means so much to me." "Just one question," I added, pulling out my phone. "Who exactly does your dad owe this money to? I'd like to pay them directly rather than giving the cash to Martin." Audrey hesitated. "I'm not sure. Some casino in Atlantic City, I think. The Golden Palace?" "Great, I'll look them up." She grabbed my arm. "Actually, it's probably better if you just give the money to Dad. He knows who to pay." More red flags than a Soviet parade. I nodded and said I needed to make some arrangements to free up the money, and I'd take care of it in the next few days. Audrey kissed me gratefully and went to call her father with the good news. As soon as she left the room, I started making calls, but not to my bank. First, I called my lawyer, a shrewd woman named Diane who had helped me set up my business years ago. I explained the situation and asked for her advice. She recommended a private investigator she had worked with on several cases. "If Martin is hiding this from his wife," Diane said, "he might be hiding other things as well. Before you hand over any money, let's find out exactly what you're dealing with." I hired the PI the next day. Kevin was a former cop with 20 years of experience in financial fraud cases. He didn't come cheap. His retainer alone was $3,000, but I had a feeling it would be money well spent. While Kevin got to work, I kept up appearances with Audrey and her family. I told Martin I was liquidating some investments and would have his money in 2 weeks. He seemed relieved, but not particularly grateful. Audrey, on the other hand, was suddenly the perfect fiancée again. Attentive, loving, excited about the wedding. It was as if our argument had never happened. 3 weeks later, Kevin called with his findings. "You're going to want to see this," he said. We met at a diner outside the city. Kevin brought a folder thick with documents, bank statements, property records, and surveillance photos. "Your future father-in-law has been busy," Kevin said, spreading the papers across the table. "The gambling debt is real. He owes $52,000 to the Golden Palace Casino. But that's just the tip of the iceberg." According to Kevin's investigation, Martin wasn't the successful real estate mogul he claimed to be. His company had been struggling for years, with multiple properties in foreclosure. He had taken out second mortgages on his house and Audrey's childhood home, which he had supposedly gifted to her but had actually kept in his name. He had 3 maxed-out credit cards and was behind on his country club dues. But here's where it got interesting. Despite these financial troubles, Martin had recently purchased a vacation property in Belize through a limited liability company registered under his college roommate's name. He had also transferred significant funds to a trust account in the Cayman Islands with nominee directors, making it difficult to connect the assets directly to him. Classic signs of someone hiding assets. "It took longer than expected," Kevin apologized. "Offshore accounts are designed to be difficult to trace, and getting the casino information required, calling in several favors from former colleagues." "My guess?" Kevin said. "He's preparing for bankruptcy. Or divorce, possibly both." I felt sick, not just because of Martin's deception, but because Audrey had been so insistent that I help him. Did she know about her father's financial schemes? Was she complicit? "There's one more thing," Kevin added, pulling out a stack of photos. "These are a combination of security footage from public areas of the casino and social media photos where they were tagged at events there over the past 2 months. The photos showed Martin at the high-stakes poker tables, and beside him in several shots, looking cozy and very much involved in the games, was Audrey. According to my contact at the casino, Kevin said, she's been there with him at least 6 times this year. They're known as a father-daughter duo. The staff call them the Martinis. Martin and Teeny, her casino nickname. I stared at the photos, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath me. Looking back, the signs were there. The business trips with her father, the occasional unexplained late nights, the inside jokes between them that no one else seemed to understand. I had attributed it to their close father-daughter relationship, never imagining they were bonding over high-stakes poker. "What do you want to do with this information?" Kevin asked. I thought about it carefully. I could confront Audrey directly, but given how convincingly she had lied to me already, I doubted I would get the full truth. I could go to her mother, but that seemed cruel, especially if she was truly in the dark about her husband's activities. Then I had an idea. "Can you get me contact information for the casino's collections department?" I asked Kevin. Kevin, it turned out, had previously worked security for several Atlantic City casinos and maintained professional relationships with their collections departments. "I can make sure this information gets to someone who can act on it," he assured me. These casinos take debt evasion very seriously, especially when there's evidence of hidden assets. 2 days later, with Kevin's help, I had compiled a detailed dossier on Martin's financial situation, including evidence of his hidden assets. Kevin personally delivered it to his contact at the Golden Palace Casino's collections department, explaining my connection to the situation and why I had the information. I also completed IRS Form 3949-A, the official information referral form for reporting suspected tax fraud, attaching the most relevant financial documentation. Kevin advised that while the IRS might take months to act, cases involving substantial offshore assets typically received priority attention. Then I called Audrey and told her we needed to talk. She came over that evening, expecting news about her father's money. Instead, I laid out the surveillance photos on the coffee table. "You want to tell me about Teeny?" I asked quietly. Her face went through a remarkable series of expressions: shock, confusion, anger, and finally, a calculated calm. "Those were just a few fun nights out with Dad," she said, shrugging. "I don't see why you're making such a big deal about it. And the money? The $50,000? That part was true. Dad does owe money. Which you helped him rack up," I pointed out. "And then you accused me of sexism for not wanting to pay it off." She had the grace to look embarrassed, at least. I panicked. Dad was putting pressure on me, and I didn't know what to do. "You could have told me the truth," I said. "At any point in our 4-year relationship, you could have mentioned that you and your father gamble together regularly. That seems like something a fiancé should know." Audrey's expression hardened. "It's not a big deal. Everyone has hobbies their partners don't know about." "Hobbies, sure. Secret gambling addictions that lead to massive debt? That's not a hobby, Audrey. That's a problem." We argued for hours. She tried to downplay the gambling, then tried to justify the lie, then tried to turn it around on me, accusing me of spying on her, of not trusting her, of overreacting. But I stood firm. "The wedding is off," I said finally. "I can't marry someone who would lie to me about something this important." She switched tactics immediately, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't do this. I love you. I'll stop gambling, I swear. We can get counseling, whatever you want." It was manipulative, and we both knew it. I held firm, and eventually, she left, angry, hurt, but most of all, caught. Canceling a wedding 1 month out was a logistical nightmare. I lost deposits with most vendors, spent hours calling guests to explain the situation as diplomatically as possible, and had to deal with returning gifts that had already arrived. But compared to the alternative, going through with a marriage based on such fundamental deception, the financial hit was worth it. The next morning, all hell broke loose. Martin showed up at my door at 7 a.m., red-faced and raging. "What the hell did you do?" he shouted. "The casino is threatening legal action. They say they have proof I'm hiding assets." I invited him in calmly. "Interesting. Are you hiding assets, Martin?" He sputtered indignantly. "That's none of your damn business." "It became my business when you asked me for $50,000, I pointed out. "And it became my business when you enlisted your daughter to manipulate me into giving it to you." He denied everything, of course. Said I was making wild accusations, that Audrey would never participate in something like that. I let him rant for a few minutes, then showed him the same surveillance photos I had shown Audrey. The change was immediate. His face went from red to ashen. "Where did you get these?" he asked hoarsely. "I hired someone to look into your financial situation before I handed over 50 grand, I said. Seemed like due diligence given the circumstances. Martin collapsed onto my couch, suddenly looking every bit his 60 years. "You have no idea what you've done," he whispered. As it turned out, I had done quite a lot. The Golden Palace, along with other major casinos in the area, added both Martin and Audrey to their exclusion list for 1 year. This wasn't a gaming commission action as I initially thought, but rather an industry practice among casinos that share information about problem gamblers and those who attempt to evade debts. The casino, armed with evidence of Martin's hidden assets, was not only pursuing their debt aggressively, but had also informed his other creditors of his attempt to hide money. The IRS opened an investigation into potential tax evasion. The country club, upon learning he was in financial trouble, had suspended his membership pending payment of his overdue account. The Cayman Islands account wasn't immediately accessible to creditors, but once the IRS investigation began, the financial institution froze the account pending resolution of the tax case. International banking agreements made this possible, though Kevin warned it would likely involve a lengthy legal process. The Belize property wasn't seized as I initially thought might happen, but multiple creditors placed liens on it, effectively preventing Martin from selling or transferring it without satisfying his debts. And Audrey's mother, Vivian, had finally learned the truth about her husband's financial dealings. She called me a week after my confrontation with Martin, surprisingly calm on the surface, though I could hear the tension in her voice. "I always knew something wasn't right with our finances," she said. "Martin would never let me see the full picture. Thank you for bringing this to light, even if that wasn't your intention." Vivian, it turned out, was no fool. She had her own money, inherited from her family, and carefully maintained in separate accounts. She was consulting with a divorce attorney and seemed more relieved than heartbroken about the end of her 35-year marriage. "I just wish Audrey hadn't followed in her father's footsteps," she sighed. "I tried to teach her better." As for Audrey and me, it was definitively over. She tried calling several times, alternating between apologies and accusations. I eventually blocked her number. Through mutual friends, I heard she had moved in with her father, who had been forced to sell his house to pay his debts. The vacation property in Belize was encumbered with liens, and the money in the Cayman Islands was frozen pending the outcome of several legal proceedings. It's been 6 months since then. Canceling the wedding was expensive, but less costly than a divorce would have been down the line. Most of our friends understood once the situation was explained, though I kept the details vague out of respect for Vivian. I've had time to reflect on what happened, and while I'm still angry about the deception, I'm also grateful for the lucky escape. If Martin had just asked for help directly, without the manipulation and lies, I probably would have offered to help him find a legitimate solution to his problems. If Audrey had been honest about her gambling, we could have addressed it together. But the web of lies they constructed revealed a fundamental lack of integrity that I couldn't overlook. The irony is that by trying to use me as their financial safety net, they ended up losing much more than $50,000. Martin's reputation is in tatters, his assets are being liquidated to pay his debts, and his wife is divorcing him. Audrey lost her fiancé, her home, and her relationship with her mother, who feels deeply betrayed by her participation in the deception. As for me, I'm doing better than expected. Diane, my lawyer, set me up on a blind date with her paralegal Hannah. We've been seeing each other for a few months now, taking things slow. On our third date, I jokingly asked if she had any gambling debts I should know about. She laughed and said, "No, but I do have an embarrassing amount of student loan debt from law school. Is that a deal breaker?" "Not at all," I told her. "At least you're honest about it." Update. A few people have asked what happened with the PI Kevin. We've actually become friends. He helped me make sure Martin and Audrey weren't trying to retaliate in any way, and we now meet up for beers occasionally. He's full of amazing stories from his years as an investigator, though he's careful never to reveal any confidential client details. Just last week, he helped another friend discover that his business partner was embezzling company funds. In my book, Kevin's services were the best money I've ever spent. Also, for those wondering about the casino, yes, they eventually got their money after forcing the sale of one of Martin's properties. The Golden Palace, along with other major casinos in the area, added both Martin and Audrey to their exclusion list for 1 year. This wasn't a gaming commission action as I initially thought, but rather an industry practice among casinos that share information about problem gamblers and those who attempt to evade debts. The casino representative Kevin spoke with said they likely would have faced a lifetime ban if they had continued to hide assets after being caught. Final note: for those struggling with gambling addiction, please seek help. It destroys lives, as I've witnessed firsthand. Unlike Martin and Audrey, most people who fall into gambling debt don't have hidden assets to cushion the blow. They lose everything, and the damage ripples out to affect everyone who cares about them. Final update. It's been almost a year now. Hannah and I are still together, and things are getting serious. She moved in last month after her lease ended, and living together has been surprisingly easy. Turns out compatibility is about more than just being able to plan a wedding together. It's about how you handle dirty dishes, midnight snoring, and whose turn it is to take out the trash. Vivian finalized her divorce from Martin and seems to be thriving. She sold the family home, bought a condo downtown, and has started taking international cooking classes. She and I still talk occasionally, which some people find odd, but we've always got along well. She even hinted that she might be seeing someone, though she wouldn't give details. Martin and Audrey have apparently moved to Florida, where he's trying to rebuild his real estate business. According to Vivian, he's telling everyone that he was the victim of a vindictive ex-son-in-law and corrupt casino practices. Some stories never change, I guess. As for me, I'm finally feeling ready to sell the engagement ring I never got to give back. Kevin. Recommended a jeweler who won't rip me off too badly on the resale. Hannah doesn't know, but I'm planning to use the money to take her to Italy next spring. Not as a proposal trip or anything, just a vacation with someone I trust and enjoy being around. After everything that happened, that feels like